Morning, gang. How are you? Yeah, good. Good to be with you. I always feel grateful to be here with you. It's important to remember always, for many different reasons, our connections to our deep connections to who we are and where we come from, and that to allow that to inform us in all of the most life-giving ways is a beautiful thing. And so I continue to be grateful to Deborah for the opportunity to be here with all of you and participate this morning. Michael, can you do something real quick? Can you pull your vision statement back up on the screen? I was touched by it. Would you indulge me for 120 seconds to unpack your vision statement with you? We're gonna do it anyway because I'm up here with the mic. Can we it and the reason I want to do this is because of how important a vision statement pulls us forward, right? It pulls us forward. It's something that it's almost too big enough. It's something that's never a completed project. It pulls us forward. It can never be complete. If we've completed it, it's not a big enough vision. That's just right. So that's something we can get. Santa Fe Center for Spiritual Living is an inclusive, thriving, and growing spiritual community celebrating. So what inclusive, thriving, growing, celebrating. Inclusive, thriving, growing, celebrating. I just want to bring this to everybody's attention that unless each one of you are doing those things, it's not going to happen. Like we can't, this isn't a community thing, it's an individual thing. And a bunch of individuals make up a community. Inclusive, am I doing the work inside of me to bring all sorts of stuff into the storehouse of my heart? Thriving, growing, celebrating. This is awesome food for surrendering. I mean, it's awesome work to constantly be working on within ourselves to surrender into this vision of it, but not to wait for somebody else in the community to do it, right? Not for Peggy to wait for Deborah, and Deborah will wait for Peggy, but for each one of this is powerful stuff, gang. It's I guess that's really all that I'm saying is it powerful, and I just want to iterate that to you and reflect it back to you. Inclusive, thriving, growing, celebrating. That's a fulfilled life, isn't it? But unless we are rigorous and unwavering in our personal responsibility to those things, we're not walking in the right direction. This is a vision statement I could get behind. It's powerful. Inclusive, thriving, growing, celebrating all lives as the expression of power and the good in the universe. I just say celebrate God. So thank you for indulging me just for a moment. I was moved by that, though. I think it's important, though, that sometimes we can see some words that are over there and they just stay over there. They're just there. They're words that are up there, right? But they don't become us. Am I in a consciousness of celebration today? If I'm not, then I'm falling short. This isn't like a chastisement. It's an opportunity. You know what I mean? If I'm not including in my heart today, I'm falling short of the vision of the community. Thriving and growing. Am I working on those things inside of myself? So it's just an opportunity to get pumped, people. All right. Different crowd, different time. This isn't gym class, Charles. But yes, it is actually in some ways, Deborah. I love you. Boop. Deborah said, so a couple of things. So I do come from the teachings of the science of mind. My mom found this Center for Church of Religious, the Seattle Church of Religious Science. Reverend Jim Munson was the minister. Anybody know Reverend Jim Munson? He's passed now, but he was my very first religious science minister, and he was great. And I mean, for me, the first many years inside of a religious science church, Centers for Spiritual Living houses the teachings of the science of mind, and the house used to be called the Church of Religious Science. Very brief history lesson, which is now called Centers for Spiritual Living, which still house the teachings of the science of mind and spirit. And so Reverend Jim used to, I was in the youth program, so that's where we got our food, was hanging around with other kids, causing mischief, but being exposed to a life-giving conversation about goodness somehow. Reverend Janet Garvey Stangvik was my first real youth minister. Anybody know that name? Do you? Reverend Janet? So she's right here. She's like just a penetrating force of goodness in the world, period, but also one of my, along with Reverend Janet was actually my first minister. So I was in her youth program. And I can stop and consider those roots and be so happy, joyous, and fulfilled in where I come from. And Deborah mentioned briefly that I don't really do church anymore. I had a good long 3-decade run inside of churches, and I've been an ordained minister for over 20 years. And I celebrate where I come from, but I also retired from the idea of church, which is nothing. It's simply my walk and my path. And someone asked me earlier if I promote Centers for Spiritual Living. I don't promote anything anymore except God. That's what I promote. I promote a relationship with the living spirit that exists within every single one of us, and I do that wherever I am. And so that's my thing. And right now I'm doing it with you folks in this Center for Spiritual Living, and I'm all here. You know what I'm saying? And I'm all in. So today I'm promoting the spirit right where we are. And the other thing Deborah mentioned is that my talk was the surrendering into freedom, and my talk is actually the freedom of surrender. And there's a distinction there for me. It's the freedom that happens in surrender. We talk a lot, and I love that quote from Marianne Williamson about surrendering, how important surrendering is. And we've heard, you've been around for a while, right? You've heard the word surrender probably a lot, yeah? And that we need to surrender, but how often do we talk about how? Like, how do you actually surrender? It's a big idea, and there's only one conclusion I've come to about how we do it. And that is, we have to turn our attention away from the effects of the world, and as it's been said, create a hermetically sealed time of stillness and silence. That's it. And that's about the tallest task that we could ever take on as a human being. Why? Because there's a ton of entertainment out here, isn't there? It's entertainment. I mean, there's part of me doing what I'm doing right now is that I want to be entertaining so that you'll swallow the message a little bit easier. You know what I mean? It's like if I'm entertaining the laughter and the joy, it might make you hear what I'm saying a little bit better than, in my mind at least, being like this and saying you must surrender by creating a hermetically sealed time of stillness and silence. To me, that's not as entertaining. There's entertainment everywhere. Where's all the entertainment in our relationships, right, Michael? There's drama, and I feel it, right? At work, we get caught up in the challenges at work and the gossip, right? The cooler talk. Did you hear what Jane said? Those cookies she brought in last week, oh my God, everybody said they loved them. They were horrible. The drama, it's everywhere. See what's on the news. We're entertained by what our senses tell us. And if I'm watching a show that I love, what do I not want to do? I don't want to take my eyes off of it. I don't want to take my eyes off of it. If I'm engaged in the drama of life, I don't want to take my eyes off of it. I don't want to take my ears off of it. If there's great gossip in the news and what's happening in the world and all sorts of craziness, man, I am tuned in because it feeds some sort of need for connection and drama and feeling and all these other types of things. But all I'm doing is becoming more engrossed in the stuff of this life, the drama. And how much of it that we're taking into ourselves and metabolizing through our system is healthy. Most of us live on a spiritual junk food diet. We're just taking in junk. My mom used to say when we'd come in, like, I'm hungry, and we wanted to go for the junk food, she said, just eat a piece of cheese. Eat some cheese, it's better for you. Now I find myself saying that to my daughter. But it's the same thing. Like, I'm looking around for the junk food. Where is it? And there's a spirit inside of me that says, go sit and meditate. Go sit and be still and listen to exactly what Gene was singing about. That was the line, like, you went out with that line, like, be still and know that I am. That is the work of surrender. That's the work. That's it. That's it. Now, there's 500 million different ways that someone can tell you how to go do that. Enroll in my retreat, and I'm going to show you how to do it. And someday I'm going to ask you to actually do that. But all the work is sitting still and getting quiet and the discipline. And we don't know how to do it. You don't know how to do it. So I'm going to sit down. Here's what even this morning. So I sit down and I'm like, all right, God, I'm committed to having our time. By the way, prayer and meditation, those are just words that describe activity in a relationship. Just like date night and just like cuddle time. They're words that describe how we nurture a relationship. Date night, yeah, let's go spend some quality time. Cuddle time, pillow talk, let's snuggle up and read. We love doing that at the end of the day. It's quality time, we're close, it's intimate. That's what prayer and meditation is. They're just words to describe activities in a relationship. They're not scary. What's scary about it is that I'm not going to get my need to be entertained fed until we do it more. This is how we surrender. We have to do it. And it is frightening. I get it, because you're sitting down, and what's the first thing that happens when I sit down and close my eyes? Anybody guess? What's the first thing? All right, let me try. Right? It's who wants to sit? I don't want to sit and be with the way that I messed up how I was a dad this morning with my daughter. Years ago, you're the most horrible dad that ever lived. Shouldn't have done that. Well, I didn't know at the time that I was doing it, that it would affect her that wrong. Well, you shouldn't have done it anyway, right? And so, do I want to sit down and do that again? No, it's uncomfortable. But there's a practice. And so if I sit down and do it enough, I start to get good at something. Right? Dancing, playing basketball. You know, like we look at these, maybe I've said this last time, you know, whoever the expert in your field that you love is, didn't just wake up one morning and be able to do that. We might be inclined in a particular direction. Do I think there was some genius that was already within Michael Jordan that allowed him to be the greatest ever? Yes, there was something there. But what did he also do? Practiced. Ongoingly, relentlessly practiced something. I should have asked this at the beginning, so I'm going to walk back just a moment and ask you a question. Like, do you really want to be free? Are we? Do you practice it? Yeah? Then if you know that, then you know that. And you practice it and you enjoy it, happiness. But I often wonder if there's a way we do something in the science of mind where we can tell ourselves something, but we don't actually have the experience of it. And I'm interested in all having an experience of God. This isn't meant to be an indictment. It's meant to be an invitation into our spiritual practice and truly being free. And how do I know I'm free? When I'm not trying to be right anymore, and I'm not trying to be wrong anymore. When I've asked myself the question about suffering and realized that I really actually don't want to suffer anymore. Like when I've dived deep enough into my soul and asked myself, which I've done multiple times now, more lately, am I really ready to not suffer anymore. Because there's some parts of me that's gotten off on suffering. I get to feel like a victim. I get to make other people wrong for my suffering, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it shows up in all sorts of ways, in subtle ways. But what happens when we stop long enough and start to practice our spirit, get deeply steeped in our spiritual practice, is that we really start to get free. Truly free. Each one of us know what that freedom is. And if we are truly free, then we're surrendered. We've let go. Surrendered into what? Do I have my daily bread today? Just today, my daily bread. Jesus, if you're into that guy, gave us the Beatitudes. Familiar with the Beatitudes? Blessed are the... If Jesus moves you, but there's some powerful teaching there. Blessed are the poor. Blessed are they that mourn or weep. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are they that hunger or thirst. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the pure of heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. And blessed are the persecuted for righteousness' sake. All of these things have to do with an internal relationship with the Spirit. They have to do with an internal relationship. All spiritual teaching talks about an internal life, not an external. They're all examples that are used externally, but they all point to an internal experience. They all point to something that happens inside of us. Am I mourning? Do I go through a period of mourning, for example, because all of a sudden what's become more important to me is the Spirit of God, and I don't have enough time in communion with that? I'm mourning for that, not for something else. Am I truly a peacemaker within myself? Am I truly free? Am I truly doing the work inside of myself, not just talking to myself about something, but having the practice of being in the midst of the revolution to be it inside of myself? The spiritual questions that we ask, we won't find the answers out here. And I know this because I've tried. This is one guy. I've tried multiple times. I've tried to find it at the bottom of a bottle. Not just one, thousands. I've tried to find it in a brand new BMW, driving it off the lot. And what happens a day later? Not an accident, thank God. It's just my butt in a leather seat. Is it a little more comfortable? You bet. Does it perform a little bit better? You bet. But a day later, I'm like, all right, I got this thing, now what? And the next relationship. Oh, this one's going to be better than the last because I learned so much. And we have some fun. And about 3 months later, it's like, okay, packaged a little bit differently, but it's still a relationship. We're talking about fulfillment here, gang. That isn't about just moving the pieces of life around. It's about stepping into any situation and being sourced by a fulfillment within us. That's surrender. That is my daily bread. Why would Jesus say something like, through the eye of a needle? Right? Or the path is narrow. I mean, I'm just telling you what the work, the investigation in the laboratory of my life that I've done. I couldn't find it at the bottom of a bottle. I couldn't find it in any relationship I've ever had. I wanted to be a dad, and I can't find it in that. God knows I can't find it in that. I couldn't find it in a job. I still can't find it whenever I look anywhere. I can't find it when I shoot the round of golf of my life. Does it feel good for a minute? Yeah. And then what happens? I'm looking for the next thing, the next fix. And that's worldly living. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm simply presenting an idea about how really to achieve surrender and freedom, the way that I know how to do that. It's times of hermetically sealed stillness and silence, where God begins like a poem to inform you about itself. And it's not a BMW. And they're fun to drive. And there are cars that are way better than that. My next one was going to be the Bentley Coupe. That's what I really want. Sexy. 300 grand, all the bells and whistles. Come on. And it's still a Bentley Coupe. It's not the kingdom of heaven. I'm more interested in the kingdom of heaven now, gang, and I want you to be interested too, because there lies freedom. Real freedom. And how do we do that? We surrender. How do we surrender? Every day. Paramahansa Yogananda tells us every day, the chief concern in our lives has to be God. The chief concern, the number one relationship. How does God become the number one relationship? By looking at how we try and do it now. If the number one relationship in my life is anything but the Spirit of God, I'm bankrupt. Where am I putting my attention and my time? And anything we put devout attention and time to begins to inform us about itself. And then we begin to see deeper and deeper and deeper and more expansive and profound joy and happiness and love. It's simply an option. It's an opportunity that in this life that we can truly begin to surrender by taking time to become still. It's almost like we have to do the opposite always of what our senses are telling us. Because my senses are telling me to buy that steak. I mean, I'm not saying don't always do the opposite of it. I mean, sometimes it's time to have a good juicy steak. But the steak becomes sweeter and everything becomes more ripe and righteous when it's born out of the Spirit. And that's simply the invitation today, to surrender. And I'm offering you today that in order to surrender is to make this relationship with the Spirit through meditation, through times of stillness, the number one thing. And then we will start to experience a joy that we thought we had it all figured out. And then we start to experience this joy that's even more profound. And the only way that we'll ever know is by doing it. That's it. That's it. Right? So the only way you'll know that the food laid out on this table is luscious and delicious and nutritious and amazing is by bringing a chair up or coming standing here and sticking a forkful in your face. That's how you'll know. Or not. I'm just saying, let's try it, shall we? See if there's anything else here I want. My daily bread today. My daily bread today. Make God the chief concern. Be willing to cut through the times where you just, sit down, as we've already discussed. It will go away. You concentrate. You begin to concentrate. You just invite. God, I want to hear more from you. I'm interested in hearing more of the Spirit, more of the expansive, profound, infinite nature, more. Working the chessboard out of our life isn't going to get us where we want to be. Moving pieces around. We've tried that, right? I know you've tried it too. Fulfillment, joy, peace, everything becomes sweeter. That's what I have to offer you today. I appreciate being with you. Much love and peace. Joy. Yeah, you're welcome.